For nearly 5,000 years, we've been told a simple story, that the Great Pyramid of Giza was built by Pharaoh Khufu as a tomb, constructed in just 2 decades, by tens of thousands of laborers using ropes, wooden sleds, and copper chisels. No machines, no advanced tools, just human willpower and primitive engineering. It's a story we've accepted for generations. But here's the problem. That story might be a lie, because when you begin to look closer, really closer, you'll find the official narrative isn't built on solid evidence. It's built on assumptions, educated guesses at best, and silence at worst. So what if the truth isn't just incomplete? What if it's been deliberately hidden, buried not by time, but by people? And at the center of that silence is one man, Dr. Zahi Hawass, the most powerful figure in modern Egyptology. For decades, Hawass has ruled over every excavation in Egypt. He decides who digs, where they dig, and what the world gets to know. He's not just an archaeologist. He's the gatekeeper of ancient Egypt. And yet, when independent researchers come forward with alternative ideas, with fresh eyes and new evidence, he doesn't welcome them, he shuts them down, literally. In interviews, he's known to explode at the mere suggestion of dissent. Why are you opening this theory again? I closed it, and I'm going to close it again. Those are his words, not the words of a curious scientist, but of someone defending a fortress. But here's what makes it worse. The information we're told about the pyramids, much of it isn't based on direct evidence. Even Egypt's top textbooks rely on interpretations, not physical proof. And Dr. Hawass himself has admitted, most of the information written about the pyramids is wrong, except mine. Now I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but it's strange, isn't it? Why fight so fiercely to control the story? Why shut down exploration at the exact moment discoveries could change everything? Is he protecting Egypt's heritage? Or is he protecting something else? Something we were never meant to find? Because if you've ever felt that the Great Pyramid holds more than we've been told, you're not alone. And tonight we're diving deep into the evidence. The real evidence, not the guesses, not the legends, but the facts that have baffled engineers, frustrated scientists, and left historians speechless. We'll explore secret chambers sealed for thousands of years, stonework so precise it challenges modern tools, and clues that suggest an entirely different purpose, and possibly a completely different builder, because sometimes the greatest secrets in history aren't lost, they're hidden by the very people we trust to reveal them. We've all heard it, that the Great Pyramid was built as the final resting place of Pharaoh Khufu, a majestic tomb, a monument to one man's legacy. But there's a glaring problem. Where's the body? Unlike every other royal tomb in ancient Egypt, the Great Pyramid contains no inscriptions, no golden treasures, no sacred texts, and most importantly, no remains of the king, not even a fragment. The sarcophagus inside the king's chamber is empty and always has been. There are no paintings on the walls, no carvings, no hieroglyphs glorifying Khufu, just cold, silent, stone. Now think about that. Ancient Egyptians documented everything. Their births, their marriages, their meals, and especially their deaths. especially for kings. Royal tombs were filled with elaborate inscriptions, spells from the Book of the Dead, offerings to the gods, and personal treasures meant to guide the pharaoh into the afterlife. But not here. The Great Pyramid, the most massive, most complex, most iconic monument of ancient Egypt, is silent, empty, blank. If this was truly Khufu's tomb, why is it missing every single thing we associate with a pharaoh's burial? Some Egyptologists point to a few faint red markings found in hidden chambers above the king's chamber. They claim these are construction notes, graffiti naming Khufu. But here's the catch. These marks were discovered hundreds of years after the pyramid was first entered, by people who had a vested interest in proving the tomb theory. And there's something even stranger. Just because someone's name is found inside a structure doesn't mean they built it. People carve names into walls all the time. That's not a blueprint. That's vandalism. It would be like finding someone's initials on the Eiffel Tower and assuming they were the architect. So again we ask, if this wasn't a tomb, then what was it? Some researchers believe the pyramid may have served a completely different function, a power plant, a spiritual chamber, a beacon aligned with the stars. Others suggest it's a remnant of a much older civilization, one that understood geometry, astronomy, and energy in ways we've only begun to grasp. Because if this was a tomb, it was the strangest, emptiest, and most secretive tomb in all of human history. And that should make you wonder, not just about Khufu, but about everything we think we know about the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid is massive. That's obvious. But what most people don't realize is how impossibly precise it is. It's not just big. It's engineered with a level of accuracy that modern builders still struggle to match. Let's start with the alignment. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north, not magnetic north, true geographic north, and it's nearly perfect, only off by a tiny fraction of a single degree. Even modern skyscrapers rarely achieve that level of accuracy. Then there's the base. Each side of the pyramid's base measures almost exactly the same, to within just a few inches, over a span of 756 feet. That kind of precision is hard to imagine, even with lasers and GPS. Now let's look inside. The king's chamber is built from giant blocks of granite. Each one weighs between 50 and 80 tons. That's the weight of a diesel locomotive, stacked more than 100 feet above the ground. And it's not just their size, it's how they were cut. The surfaces are smooth, flat, some polished to a mirror-like finish, others drilled with perfect circular holes. Engineer Christopher Dunn examined these cuts. He found signs of machining, tool marks that looked like they were made by high-speed drills, not hand tools, and certainly not copper chisels. Modern experiments tried to replicate this. Researchers took copper tools and pounded them against granite blocks. They made almost no progress. The tools dulled instantly. The granite barely scratched. So how did ancient builders shape these stones? How did they lift them? How did they place them with such precision? Some believe wooden sleds and sand ramps were used, but there's no physical evidence of those systems. No remains, no diagrams, no written instructions. Then there's the issue of lighting. Inside the pyramid are long tunnels and chambers, some deep underground. They're pitch black. Historians say workers used torches or oil lamps, but here's the mystery. There are no soot marks, no smoke residue, no signs of flame or fire damage on the walls or ceilings. If torches were used, where is the evidence? Some suggest mirrors reflected sunlight into the corridors, but the angles don't work. And mirrors that reflective didn't exist in ancient Egypt. So how did they see in the dark? Did they use a different method? Or were they using a form of light we don't understand? All these details raise the same question. Could ancient Egyptians really have done this with primitive tools? Or was there something else? Some kind of forgotten knowledge, or ancient technology? Because the more you study the Great Pyramid, the more it feels less like a tomb and more like a machine built with intent, with intelligence, and with an understanding of engineering we still haven't fully grasped. Most people think the Great Pyramid has already been fully explored, but the truth is very different. Much of it remains a mystery, including what might be hiding deep inside its narrowest shafts. In the early 1990s, a German engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink made a groundbreaking discovery. He used a tiny robot to explore a narrow shaft inside the Queen's chamber. Most experts believed it was symbolic, leading nowhere. But Gantenbrink's robot found something astonishing. At the end of the shaft was a small limestone door, fitted perfectly, with two tiny copper handles. This was unlike anything ever seen before inside the pyramid. No other doors had metal fixtures. No other chambers ended this way. It was clear. This door was hiding something, but just as Gantenbrink prepared to investigate further, the Egyptian authorities shut him down. Access revoked. Project canceled. No explanation. For years, the door became a global mystery. What was behind it? Why wouldn't Egypt let anyone look? Finally, in 2002, a National Geographic team was allowed to drill a small hole through the door. They inserted a camera. What they found shocked them. Another door. A second sealed limestone block, completely unexplored, and that's where it ended. To this day, no one knows what lies beyond that second door. No cameras, no robots, no permission. Why? This isn't the only hidden space inside the pyramid. In 2017, a team of international scientists used a powerful technology called muon radiography, a way to scan massive structures using cosmic rays. What they found was stunning. A massive void, located directly above the Grand Gallery, as long as a passenger jet, completely sealed off, with no known entrance. It's one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in decades, and yet, no exploration has been allowed. Again, Egyptian officials cited concerns over safety and preservation, but researchers around the world are asking the same question. What are they really trying to protect? Is it just about ancient stone, or something more? These sealed doors and hidden chambers may contain the answers. Answers about who built the pyramid, when, how, and most importantly, why. But right now, those answers are locked away, behind layers of stone and behind layers of bureaucracy. The Great Pyramid still holds its secrets, not because we can't reach them, but because we're not being allowed to. And that raises the most haunting question of all. What truth is so dangerous that it must be kept hidden? If the Great Pyramid wasn't a tomb, and if it couldn't have been built with copper chisels, then who built it, and how? To answer that, we have to look deeper, beyond the stones, beyond the dynasty of Khufu, and far beyond the timeline we've been told. Let's begin with the Sphinx. For decades, historians said it was built around 2500 BC by Pharaoh Khufu, the supposed son of Khufu. But in the 1990s, two men, John Anthony West and Dr. Robert Schoch, noticed something strange. The base of the Sphinx showed signs of water erosion, deep vertical grooves, rounded patterns, not the kind made by desert winds or blowing sand, but the kind made by heavy rain. And here's the twist. The last time there was that kind of rainfall on the Giza Plateau was over 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age. That would place the origin of the Sphinx long before ancient Egypt even existed, long before Khufu, long before the pyramids. Mainstream Egyptologists rejected this idea. They said it was impossible. But they couldn't explain the erosion either. Geologists, however, agreed with West and Schoch. They said the evidence was solid. If they're right, then the Sphinx isn't an Egyptian monument, it's something older, inherited, repurposed, modified. Now combine that with another powerful theory, Robert Bovell's Orion correlation. He noticed that the three main pyramids at Giza line up perfectly with the stars of Orion's belt, but not as those stars appear today. As they appeared in 10,500 BC, that's not coincidence, that's design. The ancient Egyptians associated Orion with Osiris, the god of the afterlife, the god of rebirth, a celestial connection encoded in stone. But again, if the pyramids align with Orion as it appeared 12,000 years ago, then they couldn't have been built by Khufu. They were already there, waiting. Graham Hancock builds on this idea. He believes there was once a forgotten civilization, a highly advanced culture, destroyed by a global cataclysm, maybe a flood, maybe a comet, but something powerful enough to erase history. He points to sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a temple complex more than 11,000 years old, covered in advanced carvings, precise astronomy, and knowledge we once thought impossible for its time. Hancock suggests that survivors of this ancient civilization spread across the world, bringing fragments of their knowledge with them, teaching early cultures how to build, how to align with the stars, how to remember the sacred geometry of the cosmos. That would explain why Egyptian civilization appears so suddenly advanced, with no slow development, just full-blown architecture, astronomy, mathematics. Christopher Dunn supports this from an engineering perspective. He studied the granite boxes at the Serapeum of Saqqara, each weighing up to 100 tons, carved with such precision that even today's tools would struggle to replicate them. He also examined the granite blocks inside the Great Pyramid and found drill marks, curves, angles too perfect for hand tools. He believes this is evidence of lost technology, advanced machinery, possibly even energy systems. So if the pyramids weren't tombs, And if they weren't built by Khufu, then what were they? Some say they were energy devices. Others say star maps or gateways of some kind, tools for ascension or communication. We may never know for sure, but one thing is clear. The builders of the Great Pyramid had knowledge far beyond what we credit to the ancient world. And maybe, just maybe, they weren't building for death. They were building for eternity. After everything we've uncovered, the missing body, the impossible engineering, the sealed doors, the ancient alignments, and the evidence of a forgotten civilization, one question remains. Why don't we know more? Why aren't we digging? Why aren't we opening the hidden chambers? Why is the truth still buried? The answer might come down to one man, Dr. Zahi Hawass. For decades, he has been the face of Egyptology, charismatic, passionate, powerful. He's appeared in documentaries, given global interviews, promoted Egypt's treasures to the world, but behind the cameras, Hawass holds something even greater than fame: control. As former Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, and later as Minister of Antiquities, he had the final say over all excavations, all permits, all discoveries. If you wanted to dig in Egypt, you had to go through him. If you wanted to publish new research, you needed his approval. And if your theory challenged the official narrative, you were shut out. Many independent researchers have accused Hawass of suppressing evidence, blocking access, and silencing voices, not because their work lacked merit, but because it threatened the story he had helped shape, a story where the pyramids were tombs, built by Khufu, around 2500 BC, no older, no deeper, no mystery. But what if that version of history is wrong? What if Hawass is protecting Egypt's past, but protecting a narrative, one built not on truth, but on tradition? Some say he's guarding Egypt's national pride. Others say he's defending academic reputations, or museum exhibits, or decades of accepted scholarship. Because if the Great Pyramid is not a tomb, then textbooks must change, timelines must shift, and centuries of belief must be rewritten. That kind of change is uncomfortable, it's threatening, it's dangerous. And so, the secrets stay sealed. But history doesn't belong to one man, it belongs to all of us. The Great Pyramid still stands, still waiting, still silent, but not forever, because we're asking questions, we're looking deeper, we're refusing to accept half-truths. And one day, those doors will open, the chambers will be explored, and the truth, whatever it is, will rise from the sand, not because we were allowed to find it, but because we never stopped looking. Until then, the mystery remains: who really built the pyramids, and what were they trying to tell us?